But I got to a point where I was like pushing my body past its limits for so long that something inside me felt like it just broke. And then I was like, okay, I don't know what to do. I don't feel like I'm like a person anymore the same way that I used to be. I don't feel like I can do all the things that I used to do. And I'm still me, so this is very confusing. And then I
Welcome to the Focus and Chill podcast, where we discuss unconventional productivity tactics designed for neurospicy people. I interview neurodivergent guests who've figured out secrets for getting a ton of amazing work done without burning out. I'm your host, Jeremy Nagel. I'm an ADHD software developer turned startup founder and PhD candidate. I built FocusBear to help with my own productivity and burnout challenges. Welcome to episode 130 of the Focus and Chill podcast. I'm thrilled to be joined by Eliana Bravos today. Eliana is nourished by co-creating accessible community spaces where people form deep social ties and feel like they belong. Eliana started ND Connect after she found a life-changing mentor completely by accident who also had ADHD and shared some of her other lived experiences. These relationships are hard to find, but they shouldn't be. She has an Honors Bachelor of Science from the University of Toronto, where she studied psychology and peace, conflict, and justice. As a social impact entrepreneur, she supported more than 1,000 leaders in making their cultures and processes more accessible and has facilitated non-hierarchical peer programming with neurodivergent people since 2018. She has also spearheaded projects on COVID-19, student rights, and employment discrimination. Eliana dreams big and gets people excited about the mission of ND Connect. She's still learning to not be too anxiously perfectionistic, but it feels like she's making up for it by being a good source of comedic relief. Love it. Welcome to the show, Eliana.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, great to have you on. We've had a few chats off the podcast and thought it would be great for the audience to hear about your journey. Could you go back to when you were diagnosed with ADHD and the other forms of lived experience?
Yeah, so I knew that I had anxiety since I was pretty young. I think it was since I was like 12 or something like that. But for ADHD, I only found out in think the tail end of my first or mid my second year of university. It was only after I had a really bad neurodivergent burnout, and I definitely didn't know that that's what was happening at that point in time. I ended up going in for some mental health related supports, and they had me fill out this little questionnaire. And my doctor was like, "You are scoring very highly on a lot of the ADHD measures, and I think from my experiences interacting with you, that might be something that you should explore. Can I make a referral to a psychiatrist?" And I was like, I don't think it's ADHD. Sure, maybe, like, but why not kind of thing. And then
Mhm.
I remember after the first time talking to my psychiatrist, he was like, yeah, I really, really think that you have ADHD. And then, of course, we had some more meetings and things like that. But I did end up getting a diagnosis then. It's like
Mm.
early 20s. I don't remember specifically how old, but I remember getting that diagnosis and being like, okay, I don't really know what this means. I don't really know what to do with this. And then it did start me on my journey though of trying to connect with more ADHD community, but it just kind of like, yeah, sat there for a while. It's like, okay, cool, I know this, but how does this help me? There's so much, that's just the start of the journey. And then you have to learn so many strategies and figure out so much stuff. And when you first get it, it's like, you don't know any of that. You don't even know that you have to do that stuff. So
Mm. Yeah, and I guess that was the inspiration and the connect as well of you not knowing what to do post-diagnosis, and now you're helping people with it.
yeah, that was definitely a big source of inspiration. I think I was just at a point where I felt very stuck in my life, and I had worked in the neurodiversity space before and had a lot of other neurodivergent friends and things, which I felt very lucky about at that point in time. I just noticed that a lot of us, including myself, like a lot of the time was just we had this notion of feeling very stuck. It was very challenging. I didn't feel a lot of hope for the future. I felt like, oh my gosh, things are really rough right now. And I don't know, is this just my brain gonna get better? I had a lot of internalized ableism at the time too, not really understanding context person, like interactions, whatever. But then I remember connecting with this mentor who really helped me. She also had ADHD. We didn't know it at the time when we first connected. We only disclosed after, but I just remember her advice was so helpful for me. Everything she was saying wasn't generic advice. It was very like, have you tried this random thing? And I was like, oh my gosh, this is super helpful. Thank you for helping me create the system. When I found out she also had ADHD, I was like, wow, she's in my industry. Clearly, she's found a way to thrive on her own terms and find ways to support her needs. She's very happy in her life, and that's wonderful to see. At that point in time, as silly as it might sound now, like in retrospect, it really felt like, oh my gosh, I don't know if it's possible for me to be happy in my life. And so seeing her and having that relationship did give me a lot more of that hope for the future. And that's something that I really needed at the
Mm.
time. I was like, wow, these relationships are so life-changing. This was completely luck. I don't know how I would reproduce this, even if I sought it out now, knowing what I know now. So how do we help democratize access to these types of connections and help more people have the supports and the community and the friendships that are going to make people's lives feel supported and they're worth living. I think that's really important.
Yeah, 100%. And the other thing I'm curious about in terms of the backstory is the experience of going through neurodivergent burnout before the diagnosis. What did that look like for you?
Yeah, I had terrible mental health and I didn't really know why. My anxiety was so bad, but it almost felt like I was very depressed. I think that's the best way to describe it, but it didn't really seem like depression was also the right feeling. It's not that like I don't know. I'm not an expert on depression or anything like that, so I don't want to misspeak about what the experience of having that is like. But I remember talking to my psychologist at the time and them saying, okay, but it's not that like, you're not feeling it wasn't like a lack of motivation. It's so hard to explain what that feeling was like. It wasn't like a lack of caring or not wanting to do anything. It felt like this really intense overwhelm. And there was so much I had to do that I got to a point where I was like pushing my body past its limits for so long that something inside me felt like it just broke. And then I was like, okay, I don't know what to do. I don't feel like I'm like a person anymore the same way that I used to be. I don't feel like I can do all the things that I used to do. And I'm still me, so this is very confusing. And then I did, it was accompanied by a lot of mental health symptoms as well afterwards. It came from me really pushing myself. And when you're feeling that way, it's hard to get yourself back on course because you don't really have as much energy or supports than like with ADHD. I feel like a lot of the executive functioning stuff was hard for me to manage. I felt so overwhelmed by trying to do well in school that it was hard for me to make sure I was eating and keep a routine and like sleep properly. And sleep is something that I've always struggled with. I think that all of that kind of blended together in
Hmm.
this, I don't know, potion of not feeling well. I think overwhelm was the main word that I would use. It's honestly even hard for me to remember that time, even though it wasn't that long ago, because I don't even feel my memory was it. Yeah, unfortunately, it was accompanied by also some like yeah, the mental health symptoms were hard at the time, but after learning to accommodate myself better, it's been a lot easier, especially as
Hmm.
somebody who is very sensory sensitive. I didn't know that about myself at the time. And then it was only when COVID hit that I realized how much of a strain that was also putting on me because then it was the first time that I was just in my own environment all the time for a while. And of course, super scary time, but it was helpful in learning what I needed to support myself and be like a human and what that means to me. So that was good.
Hmm. Yeah, I
Silver
can
lining,
relate to that
yes.
as well in terms of experiences of burnout when I was younger and not having clear memories around it. And I think that there's talk about ADHD disrupting short-term memory, but I think for me it also affects my long-term memory as well, that I find it hard to remember certain things, which can be positive because then I don't remember how hard certain things were and then I have another go at them. But it can be negative as well, putting myself into situations that caused issues in the past. When you said that you're doing better now at accommodating yourself, what are some of the changes that you've made that have helped?
Yeah, I think definitely when I can work from home, it makes a huge difference for me. I do benefit from the social energy of being around other people, and I really do appreciate that. But having the option of being in my own space when I really need to focus and not having to, for a lot of my life in school, I would go to school for 8 hours a day, but then I wouldn't really be able to pay attention because I was distracted. I thought I used to get migraines all the time, and I do have migraines and headaches sometimes, but the instance of it or what I would call like migraines. I didn't have the words for getting overstimulated, so that was the closest thing I could call them. I would just feel kind of baseline sick a lot. Then I would have to go home and then try and compensate for not being able to focus in class, even though I was really trying to. And so I would like kind of self-teach everything after the school day already ended. And I think with working sometimes at a more typical job, it would be somewhere where it's like, okay, I'm really trying to do this work here, but then I have to go home and then I could like finally focus because I had a good space that was quiet, non-distracting, whatever else that let me really get into the zone. So that was a big thing for me. Also not having meetings in the mornings is something I do. I definitely have a delayed sleep rhythm, and I always have. And so being able to have my first meeting like afternoon, that makes a huge difference instead of
Oh, that's a good idea.
and then I also have no meeting days. I try and do at least three no meeting days a week if I can. At least not external to my team. That really helps me just focus on that type of work because I feel like meetings are almost a different type of work. I've been
Mm.
playing around with having a new schedule where I can group tasks together by the type of focus or energy required. Is it learning? Is it creative brainstorming? Is it a lot of like meetings and admin work? Is it executing on something that, writing a blog post or whatever else, just trying to group those tasks together has also been helpful. I think in school I would often find myself doing that, but I didn't realize that's what was happening. And so it's nice to have a consciousness around it where I can design my day a little bit more to meet my energy needs and work better for me. But those are some of the things for sure.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good idea. And we'll talk more about that in the productivity tip section. That's a great one. Are you finding that by making these changes in your life that you're able to lean more into your strengths now?
Yeah, I think so. I've always been somebody that's really pushed myself to achieve certain outcomes that I felt like I had to in school and stuff. I feel like that's why I went undiagnosed for so long too, is that I don't know, it's not like I would overcompensate after school by trying to make sure that I would hit whatever grades I wanted. I think to me, it's less maybe even about the outcome, but how achieving those outcomes feel in my body. It's less stress and, oh gosh, if I don't do this right now, the world is gonna end. And I need that last minute rush of adrenaline to be the thing that finally gets me to focus and then do the thing. A lot of times I'm able to find more joy in the process and feel like it's a playful, fun thing to work on. And that makes me feel really good. So I think like proportionately, it makes me feel doing work is a positive experience instead of it being this thing that I'm dreading until I can't. And then it feels like I'm almost hacking some sort of system by doing it the last minute and then still pulling it off. So I think that that's a really nice transition, especially because the other way was not sustainable long term, especially not with more complex tasks that you begin to encounter after high school. Also balancing that with all the other things that have to happen in life, making food and eating and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I love that idea of being able to make work something that is playful and enjoyable. On that note, can you tell the audience about the work that you do?
Right now, my main thing is I am the founder of, or the co-founder of a pro-social social platform. Our goal is to build something for neurodivergent adults that helps live better lives, whatever that means to them. So our tagline is sort of get unstuck with people who get you. It's the idea that, through human connection, meaningful, deep human connection, that unlocks so much potential in our lives, right? Whether it's feeling better, having good friends and social relationships, or professional development. I feel like social capital is like a huge thing that's often overlooked when we're talking about how people gain access to different types of career opportunities that they might feel are important to them. And so, how do we create a safe container where people can explore those types of connections that are going to really have that transformative impact on their life? My goal is to connect people with one another and to have those meaningful conversations, to get unstuck through maybe being playful or through getting emotional energy or through hearing the right advice or perspective or through learning something new or whatever else. And then I hope that 20 years from now, they can look back on it, these types of connections, and say, oh my goodness, I'm so glad to have met that person. That person did something that really mattered to me in my life. And so, yeah, we're really trying to figure out how to design to support those types of experiences and make those neuro inclusive for people.
Yeah, I think it's really important, the design aspect of it, because I guess there are many public forums, like say the ADHD subreddit and numerous Facebook groups that have the same general idea, but I find they don't really work for me because they become just a fire hose and it doesn't have that person-to-person connection. Could you talk about how you're creating that environment where people can make meaningful connections?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're really trying to figure out is how do people go from 0 to 1? On like Facebook groups, those are great for getting maybe generalized advice or Reddit as well. But people like the norm in those spaces is not like you send them a connection request, and then you talk to this person, and then you build a relationship with this person. And so that's something that's very explicitly different in this space. We've been thinking a lot about the idea of structured serendipity. How do we create opportunities for people to just be meeting each other and then increase the surface area where lucky things can happen to them as a result. So there's a couple different things that we've done there. Our app is by application only, which helps create a bit of a safer environment because we don't have issues with trolling or other things that you might see in unfortunately the darkest corners of the internet. So I think it does feel like a much more supportive culture. There is a culture felt when you come on and you see how people are interacting with each other. Also, we have weekly community hours where people can come on and meet each other live and have conversations with themed topics. Right now, we're also designing different human connection experiments, kind of like social experiments, people having 100-person or 1,000-person picnics, things like that. We're looking at what works really well about the physical realm in terms of how people connect with each other, what works so well about third spaces that exist in the physical world, and those institutions that have historically really brought people together to form meaningful bonds, and how do we take those principles but change it so it's existing in more of a tech world? Because, so many of us spend so much time on the internet, so how do we make the internet a better place? And so I think that there's a lot that we're still figuring out, but one of the things that we've been thinking a lot about recently is the idea of how novelty can be a good way of also bringing people together. How do we connect people over new shared experiences, and how do we design that into technology? I'm really excited for us to be releasing more of that soon.
I love that. Will keep people interested as well, not knowing what's going to come next. When you were saying the 100 or 1,000 people picnics, is that something that you're gonna do as well? That people meet online, but then also connect offline occasionally too?
Yeah, I love the idea of. So I saw my co-founder sent me an article yesterday about this huge picnic that people in Toronto organized. I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. So I've been thinking about that and reading more about how that felt to people and what their experience was. I read this other paper recently about how a lot of times people think that when they talk to strangers, they're going to feel more negatively after that interaction, but in most cases, they actually feel a lot more positively than they did before talking to them. So I think that there's a lot to be said about just letting people know this, right? Because then I think it helps them maybe take a little bit more social risks and put themselves out there and be a little bit more comfortable having some of these interactions. I honestly am forgetting what your question was.
No, you,
If you can
you
say one
answered
more
it,
time for
that
me. Okay.
it's something that you might try and do in the future. The last time we spoke, not on the podcast, we were talking about, I think, possibly in-person meetups as well. I organize a meetup in my local area, and I find that really meaningful, even though it's not a huge number of people. Like we went for a walk along the coastal area, along the cliffs, and there were 8 of us that went on Sunday. And that was really nice for me. It was a good number of people. I think 1,000 people would feel a bit overwhelming to me, but
Yeah.
there, there might be a sweet spot or ways
Yeah, I
of creating
completely
the
agree.
smaller connection within that.
Yeah, we have done a couple in-person Toronto meetups because that's where most of our members are based right now. We are global, but just have a stronger Toronto presence right now. Most recently, we did this scavenger hunt that it was put on by a different event organizer, but you could just go as a group. We had a group of us do this scavenger hunt, amazing race style thing through our pass system, which is like subway adjacent. That was really fun, kind of just exploring the city together. And yeah, I definitely led to some really cool connections. So I do really appreciate the value of place-based connections, but I think that sometimes having the online aspect where you've met a couple of the people first can
Mm.
kind of ease then meeting in person and having those interactions versus you being strangers and meeting in a physical space. I think that that tends to be anxiety inducing for a lot of people, or, maybe for some people, they're super comfortable. They're like, heck yeah, I'm so social. But I've noticed a lot of people in our communities do tend to feel safer in a space that they have more control over, and then being able to shift that also into the physical world.
Yeah, makes complete sense. When you were talking about bringing play into your work, does that mean your hobbies get blended in? What do you enjoy? Would you say that you have distinct hobbies or do they combine together?
Yeah, honestly, I think that that's it's so, I think I have a hard time compartmentalizing my work self versus my life self. I feel
Mm,
like that's something that's been
same
hard
here.
for me in general. Yeah, so I think that they do tend to blend together. My favorite thing to do, hobbies wise, is going hiking and just putting all my technology away and then going on like a nice hike in a new place. I do love having new experiences generally too. So anything that feels kind of weird or something that I might not have tried before, I'm very motivated to do that, especially with new people, because I think that that does really help form really interesting connections. I think I do, yeah, so it does definitely blend together. And later today, right after this, I'm doing a coding club because I've been wanting to learn to code personally, separate from like the thing that I'm doing. I'm not technical at all, but I've been wanting to learn for quite a while and got somewhat through a course on Swift, and then that was not consistent. And then now I don't know if I remember anything. So I was like, okay, I really, really want to learn how to do this. I feel like I have the capacity to do something like this. And so I just opened it up to the ND Connect community too. And then now there's, I think, 8 of us that are in this little coding club right now. And every week, a couple times a week, we're meeting and learning to code or practicing coding or doing something coding related. It's like an hour of focused coding time and then half an hour of a social aspect around it where we get to talk about it and what are we excited about and what are we learning and how's it going. So yeah, I think it's nice because community is inconvenient sometimes in general. Like I think that's like an important principle, but community also often doesn't feel work to me. It's fun to be around other people, build those social bonds and to do things that I might otherwise try and struggle to do alone, but to have other people around me who are supporting me and all together we're able to build these really meaningful connections, but also accomplish cool things. I don't know. That's really fun. So I feel like that's definitely a place where it blends.
Awesome. That does sound really fun. And it's also a great productivity technique to do the body doubling combined with the social aspect afterwards. You've already mentioned a few. The question I was going to ask is how do you optimize your productivity? So you've already said that you have themed days depending on the type of focus, and that you do body doubling, and that you inject play into your work so it gets around the task aversion. But how do you deal with things where, as a business owner, you inevitably have to deal with taxes and other admin that might not be that enjoyable to do? How do you make yourself do
Yeah.
that?
So I am not a solo founder, and that is a huge reason for that. I have this, both my co-founders are amazing and super supportive with a lot of the things that I would otherwise really struggle to do alone. One of my co-founders manages a lot of the operation stuff. We call him the MVP, the most valuable Peter, because he really takes care of taxes and all the things that I feel like I could never do. It's really helpful, I think, to be in a team where you can outsource the things that are not your strengths, and together you're stronger than you would be alone. Of course, there is still stuff that I don't want to do sometimes. For me, task initiation is always the hardest piece of that puzzle. I did write a blog post like a year ago, and it's the only blog post I've ever written about all the task initiation strategies I've ever used and tried, just kind of building that out for myself because I forget what strategies even work for me. A lot of times when I use a strategy for a certain amount of time, no matter what, it'll stop working, and then I have to switch up the strategies that I use and try because I feel like the sense of them being something that like new that I'm trying or coming back to, that's really helpful for me as well. But I think just yeah, support getting started is the biggest thing. And then once that initial momentum has been built up, it's good until the last 95% is done. And I'm like, oh gosh, I have to post this video that I spent 4 hours editing. That's hard. And then like my co-founders now know this though, and we'll be like, okay, we're getting on a call and you're gonna screen share and you're gonna click the post button. And so that's really helpful. And also me, I think learning how to be vulnerable enough to rely on that social support. Like body doubling is the thing that helps me the most for sure. But just like different levels of that like social accountability piece and emotional support, doing the things that feel hard to do. Right now, one thing that's been really helpful is my co-founder will call me every day in the morning and we'll just have like a little chat in the morning together as we get ready for the day, just like a phone call. And so there's somebody else around while I'm like, making my coffee and doing whatever else. And then we'll transition to body doubling from that like phone call. But there is kind of an explicit, joyful conversation that I can look forwards to. And that's been really nice for both of us getting our day started. So yeah, we figure things out as we go though, for sure.
Very good. We can, if you want to share that blog post later, we can include that in the show notes too. Sounds like there'd be tons of strategies. With dealing with community, you were saying that it can be inconvenient sometimes, and I've experienced that due to potentially volume of communication, that it can feel a bit overwhelming for me. How does it go for you in terms of both the messages within the ND Connect platform and also other emails and communication that might make it hard to actually do the 4 hours of video editing? How do you
Yeah.
deal with that?
Yeah, I think trying to schedule structured times for me to deal with my emails is definitely helpful and not doing it all the time. That was a big thing that I struggled with at the beginning. I honestly still struggle with emails. I feel like I don't have a great solution for how to keep on top of email. That's the biggest thing that I'm still working on. There are tools that I've heard of that people use, but I don't know how I feel about them. So I've been trying to figure out that still. But yeah, just the thing that's been most helpful is like, okay, I have like 350 unread emails. I'm gonna sit down and spend like 4 hours doing them all in one day. And then please, 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 no one reply to me. Like while I'm through these emails until after they're done. But yeah, still trying to work on a more sustainable strategy for that. But I think in terms of messages on the Connect platform on your profile, there's a space to say other things that you should know about me. A lot of people put information about their communication preferences there, and they'll say things like, hey, if I'm not super responsive on messages, know that it's not you. I get overwhelmed sometimes. Double text me, right? And so I think it's nice to have a space where saying that stuff is normalized. For me, a lot of times I'll tell people just to call me or to just book a time with me in my Calendly or whatever else, because I find phone calls a lot less overwhelming than texting
Hmm.
and like, the expectation of consistent messaging with people who it makes sense to have a more in-depth conversation with. I'll just say like, hey, I don't want to message back and forth about this. Can you please, but I do want to talk to you about this. And I think it's really important. Is this accessible to you? And if so, can you please just give me a call and let's transfer it to that modality? Yeah, but I think people are also understanding when they're like, oh, I'm so overwhelmed. I'll get back to your messages soon. And then like, it takes a couple weeks.
Yeah. No, that is an issue for me. And I like that idea of transitioning to a call. It's the same for me. It can be a lot easier to deal with. If there's 5 things, I'd rather just have that be my sole focus rather than it dragging out over a few days and having to
Yeah.
remember to go back and get my brain in the
Yeah.
right context.
Yeah, there have been multiple times where I've been on a call with somebody and they're like, oh my gosh, I know we're out of time. Can I send you the rest of my questions and can you answer over email? I'm like, no, I will not answer over email. Book another time to talk to me or just call me tomorrow, but we'll play phone tag. That's fine with me. But if you ask me to answer a bunch of questions over email, I'm gonna sit there and be overthinking it. I'm reading what I'm saying. At least when we're talking, it feels lower pressure and then I can kind of better understand the context of what you're really wanting to know and understand or ask about too. So yeah,
Mm,
communicating that makes a big
mm,
difference.
makes sense. Is there another blog post on the way about tactics that didn't work? You've got all the ones that you have tried in terms of the task initiation. Were there any in there that you found not helpful?
There is some like chaotic ones that are helpful if I do them, but the barrier to doing them is almost harder than just starting. One of the things I'm thinking about is taking a cold shower, like a really cold shower for 5 minutes is something that gets people's dopamine flowing and it's something that like does like I don't know, I tried it and I was like, wow, this does work. Like I feel like very like alert and I feel like primed to focus. But then like, if it's sending that email or taking a really cold shower, I feel like the email's like easier most days. So like sure, this one like works, but like in practice, does it really work? I think not for me. As somebody who does not like the cold, that's one of the ones. I think a lot of the strategies do stop working at some point. I used to love Focus Mate as a tool, and I think they're still wonderful. I still recommend them to a lot of people looking for on-demand body doubling. But that tool has completely stopped working for me now because they're so good at rescheduling the calls. When I see my focus partner switch so many times, I'm like, okay, if I don't feel like doing it 5 minutes before or even like 2 minutes before, this person's just going to be paired with another person on the app. There's no real social accountability there. And so my brain no longer perceives that as a real commitment that I'm making because the platform's so good at finding you a new person to body double with. I've had to revamp that strategy, I guess, and then try and find people who it's like, okay, I know that if I don't meet with you, you're not going to have anybody else to meet with in this moment, and that's going to screw you over in a way that I would never want to do to you for the tasks that are like really painful, you know? Yeah.
Doing it with your co-founder makes sense then.
Yeah. And also, people in the community, like friends, I feel like it's also a good way to spend quality time with people as a founder. So,
Definitely. Cool. We're gonna take a quick break and think about some other tactics. The Focus and Chill podcast is brought to you by Focus Bear, a focus enhancement app for ADHDers. Staying on top of tasks is easier than ever with Focus Bear's new To-Dos feature. Record a voice note describing what you need to do, and Focus Bear's AI will turn it into a structured set of subtasks and automatically prioritize it for you. You can also take a photo of the paper to-do list, and the AI will work its magic. I'd love for you to try it. You can jump onto focusbear.io or just Google Focus Bear and try it out. Let me know what you think. We're back from the break, and I'm keen to hear about what the mornings look like. We've established that you might sometimes take a 5-minute cold shower, but not as a rule. What do your mornings look like?
yeah, usually that call with my co-founder recently has been super helpful, so that's something that's nice. And then honestly, I don't have a great routine. Usually I get up, try and drink some water, brush my teeth, and I have a rule that I'm not allowed to acknowledge that I feel sad until I've had coffee. I feel like that's something that's really helped me manage my ADHD for a lot of my life. And, I have tried stimulant medication, but that didn't work well for my specific case. And so, as somebody who does not take Vyvanse or whatever else, coffee does like really, really help me personally. And I think it's a nice morning ritual that I also enjoy, like the process of making a coffee or even going out on a walk and getting coffee or whatever else. So that's the first thing to my day. I'm not great about routines, so it's just a lot of whatever else I feel like doing until it's time for that call with my co-founder, and then we'll talk and then we'll get transitioned to work. So that's why I think it's a nice soft start to my work day in a way that feels really good. Um,
Hmm.
yeah.
And you said no meetings before midday, but what time do
Yeah,
you
no,
have the call with your co-founder?
honestly, usually 11 or 11:30. Because I work a lot of times really late into the night. And so for
Hmm.
me, it's helpful to be able to just have the mornings to be kind of a foggy person. I think that my brain tends to focus a lot better at night. And so because I can like work and shift my hours a little bit later, I often tend to because I feel like it lets me be a little bit more creative and focused. And my brain feels like it's finally on around, I don't know, 11 at night, honestly. But I still often get to work before then.
Hmm. Yeah, is that something that has always been the case for you, say during university as well, that you've done better when you're studying at night?
Yeah, I think so. Even in high school, since grade 7 or 8, I really started noticing how much better I did at night. And it was hard to balance the reality of that with school in the morning. But I think I also had so much more energy back then that it was okay. I felt like it was okay if I only got 4 hours of sleep. But I think now as an adult, like I really like feel it more. I'm like, oh my gosh, if I don't get my 8 hours, I feel dead in the morning unless I'm doing something so exciting that I can't sleep, which is often the case. If it's before a road trip or I'm going to be doing something that I'm really looking forward to, then it's easier to operate on lower levels of sleep because like the energy from like the, oh my gosh, I'm looking forward to this is so high.
Hmm. Yeah. And so sleep-wise, it would be when your body calls you to sleep and you ride the wave of focus in the evening.
This is the thing that I really need to work on the most. I don't have good sleep hygiene, and I understand increasingly as I get older that it is important, but it's very challenging for me to have any sort of nighttime routine. I get tired, but I think that my brain has a hard time just deciding, okay, I'm just gonna do nothing and just like lay here with my eyes closed in a dark room. And so usually I'll put on a show or something to watch and I'll fall asleep to that very quickly. My brain's not then like, okay, you have to do this incredibly boring thing. It's like, okay, now I get to do this fun thing. And then I'm so tired that I fall asleep. I think that it's worse for, having light in your room and whatever else you're supposed to do theoretically to get the best sleep quality and not wake up in the middle of the night. And so I've been trying to be a little bit more intentional about finding ways to force myself to put it away. But yeah, I know. I think that's definitely a huge work in progress. If other people have strategies or if you have any strategies, please feel free to share them with me.
Yeah, no, it's hard. I tend to be able to sleep pretty well as long as I do my journaling. If I
Mm.
dump out the thoughts before I go to bed, then I feel a bit less restless and then it's easy for me to drift off. But if I don't do that, it requires a lot of stimulation for me to get to sleep, something to
That's
take
a
my
really
mind
good
off it.
tip. I've never tried journaling before sleeping, so thank you. I will try that.
Hmm. It might be something to experiment with. Might not work forever. I tend to be someone who, because of the autistic part of me, I love routine and I like a little bit of novelty, but I'm very happy to do the same thing each day. But I recognize not everyone is like that. So wrapping up, where can people find ND Connect online if they would like to apply to be part of the community?
Yeah, so you can go to our landing page, ndconnect.app, and then there's a little button that says join our community. And if you click that, it'll take you to our application form. And it's also supposed to be overwhelming or anything like that. It just gives us a little bit more information. And most times, if we have any questions, we'll send you an email back asking for more information about something. So it's not supposed to be this stressful process.
Cool. And if they want to connect with you individually before they join the community, is LinkedIn the best place or Instagram, somewhere like that?
I think LinkedIn's probably the best place. I will respond. My Instagram is Eliana hyperfixates. And on TikTok, it's the same handle. So I will like respond there, but I think LinkedIn is probably the place that I am the most responsive. If you join the community, you can also send me a connection request and we can book a call with me that way as well. So um yeah, whatever works. I try to be responsive, but like feel free to double message or triple message me to be honest. Because sometimes I do get overwhelmed by the amount of messages I get, especially on those more publicly facing platforms, because it feels like, I don't know, anybody on the internet can message you. So
Hmm. Yeah. Do you have any final words or asks for the audience?
it's a great question. If there's anything that I can do to be helpful, like I am always happy to try and pay it forward to like other neurodivergent people who might be listening, or if you feel stuck, just to help like troubleshoot or help connect you with the right person who might be able to help. I really am more than happy to do anything like that if there is anything that I feel like I can. So please don't feel worried about reaching out. I feel a lot of times people can feel a little bit intimidated or scared about reaching out to like anybody who's like somebody that they don't know, like this idea of networking. Please feel free to send me a message. I will not ignore you, especially if you say that you saw me on this podcast. That'll give me good context cue, and then I can know, okay, I said this thing, so I better respond now and not wait. So that's like the third or fourth.
Love it. And what you were saying at the start as well around people perceive that talking to strangers will be a bad experience, but it actually is a positive one a lot of the time. I think that's a really powerful message. Thanks so much, Eliana.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Focus and Chill podcast. To listen to other episodes, jump onto podcast.focusbear.io. If you'd like to be a guest on the show or you know someone who'd be a good fit, email us at team@focusbear.io. Otherwise, stay focused, stay chilled, and peace out.